Calling to order the meeting of Monday, February 2nd, 2026 at 5 p.m. We're going to go on to number 2, the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions from the floor?
I have none, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are none, all those in favor of a motion that someone is going to put on the floor? Councillor Hughes.
I move that council adopt the February 2nd, 2026 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting agenda as presented.
All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to number 3, the adoption of the minutes. The minutes of December 1st, 2025 Governance and Priorities meeting. Did anybody find any alterations that need to be done on those minutes? If not, would someone make a motion to accept them? Councillor Babalola.
I move that council adopt the minutes of the December 1, 2025 Governance and Priorities Committee meeting as presented.
All those in favor? And that is carried. Number 4, delegation presentation. We have none. Number 5, comments from the public. We have none. Number 6, review of bylaws or policies. We have the council remuneration, travel and expense policy with Ms. Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor Shannon. Good evening, Council. So coming back to you is the Council remuneration, travel and expense policy attached in red line and clean, just so you can clearly see the changes made, but also easily read it. This is coming off of our January 12 conversation where Council had provided a few requested changes and administration had noted that we would have some proposed changes coming forward as well. So a summary of those, we fixed any discovered typographical or grammatical errors if any were noticed. We also updated the honorarium rates to reflect the current 2026 rates. So the policy states that each year that rate will get increased up to a maximum of, or sorry, not increased necessarily, adjusted based on the consumer price index as at December of the year prior. Up to a maximum of 3%. And so we just wanted it to be more clear and transparent of what those most current rates are. And so we also added a line that just allows administration to make that update every year so that the policy amount remains current, but doesn't have to come back to council to get reapproved, simply because that's already done in the policy. Now we also just removed a clause that was no longer applicable following the last amendment. The council events attendance report, section 2.5, simply updated this to align better with current working practices. Submitting by the 1st of the month was not really working that well. So just aligning it with what we're currently doing. 4.2, council professional development. This was where we added a clause to provide more clarification that professional development doesn't include participation in organizations or clubs that require a membership. So really trying to keep that to courses and conferences and those types of things available for professional development, but not an organization where you'd have to pay a membership fee. And we also removed the clause with respect to out of province conferences, simply because with the discretionary budgets, this becomes a little bit redundant. Really, if council wanted to, all of council could attend using their discretionary budgets. They just would then likely have depleted them. So you certainly could all decide to go to a conference, but it would take a significant portion of the budget because they're typically a little more expensive to attend out of province. But we didn't feel that that was necessary given the discretionary budgets. Also, section 4.8 is new, adding the Canadian Nuclear Association conference. We felt like it was important to add this in, given the Energy Alberta's proposed development in our area, and this would help council to remain apprised of all of the things ongoing with nuclear and connect with stakeholders and representatives in relation to the project. So we thought that would be really important. We are seeking feedback on this clause with respect to who would be allowed to attend this conference. Obviously under that, not having to use your discretionary budget, because let's just say a counselor who was not approved by council under the policy wanted to go, they could use their discretionary budget and attend, same as with FCM, it just would likely eat up all of their discretionary budget, given the cost of going to Ontario. That's where the conference is typically held. So as written currently, we've proposed that it would be the PREC representatives, being the mayor and an additional member of council, which is currently Councillor Forsyth. And then every year, theoretically, that number could change or remain the same, and that individual would be the one allowed to go. However, we could change that to just say, you know, 2 members of council, and council can kind of decide that year who wants to go, rotate it amongst the council members. This was just simply one way that we saw as a fair way to do that. But completely up to council how they'd like to see that go. So just now looking for council's feedback on these proposed changes. If there's any more, if there's anything we don't like, then we can bring it back to a future meeting for adoption.
Okay, I'll open up the floor for any comments from the councillors. I do have one, I'd like to know what council's feedback is on me attending this conference, the nuclear conference, if you feel it is good value or not. It was suggested by our peers that we attend and that it is important and there's really great information at this conference, but I just keeping budgets in mind, I just wanted to see what the rest of council thought of that, attending this.
I think it's important that you go.
Thank you. Anybody else have any input on that? Councillor Ford?
Not gonna use that because it buzzes, but who, just a quick question, who is all on the, I think you mentioned it, on the committee for the nuclear?
Myself and Councillor Forsyth.
So I would suggest that it be you two that attend. And yes, I do agree.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. And if no one has questions, I do have one more question. We did have several conversations now about meals. It's come up in the election, it's come up quite a few times. And I noticed, I thought we had to have a hospitality policy, but I now noticed that on 7.1, under 7.1, the town will provide light meal for council, governance priority committee meetings and various other meetings of council scheduled throughout the year as required. Does that include the meals that we have before our council meetings, or does that apply to more things like if we host someone or if we have a internal workshop or something like that? I just want some clarity there.
Yes, sorry. So this is for council meetings and the governance and priorities committee meetings, and then other meetings as scheduled and as a meal may be required throughout the year. So for example, you know, we schedule those council workshops sometimes on the 3rd Monday, or throughout the week at some point, and maybe it's during dinner hours. And so we bring in dinner so we can have those meetings and accommodate people's schedules to have the meetings in the evening while people can still feed people dinner, so we're not hangry while we're in those meetings.
So we should probably ask some feedback from council on that, because we had this conversation several times, so maybe now is the time to put it to bed and clarify what we're gonna do here.
Absolutely.
Councillor Erickson.
I am in favor of the meals being provided. A lot of times when you're going, for example, for you, Mayor Shannon, you're going from one meeting to another, and it'd be more appropriate for you to be accommodated for that as well too.
For the rest of council though, how do you see? I know that some councillors come right after work and don't have a chance to have a meal, so I'd like to address that at the same time. Councillor Ford.
I'm one of those people that get off work at 3:30 and I'm usually here at council by 4 o'clock. So for me, either way, it doesn't matter to me. just makes it for a long day, but yeah, I could. Make something when I get home at 9 o'clock, like, it doesn't matter either way.
Counselor Erickson,
I'm in favor of continuing it as it was.
anyone else want to weigh into that? Counselor Deuce?
Yeah, I'm mostly in favor of it. I could take it either or. But for the people who also work other jobs, quite often, I know, for example, me, I don't always order food. But if I'm having a busy day or I've just come from another meeting and I run right here, quite often we're here till, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So I don't think it's terribly a bad thing if you're gonna be skipping meals and stuff like that to have something light here for us to eat beforehand.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? So what I'm hearing is that you want it to stay the same, or anybody want that changed? Speak now, here's your chance. Okay, seeing nobody talk, Counselor Ford.
Just for the record too, it's light meal, it's not like a steak and lobster dinner, it's like a sandwich or soup or something like that. So, just for those people listening,
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to anything on this policy before we have a vote on how we proceed? Okay, does anybody want to entertain a motion regarding this item? Counselor Ford.
I'll put a motion on the floor that council direct administration to bring the revised council remuneration policy, remuneration, travel and expense policy to a future council meeting for formal consideration as discussed.
Is there any more discussion on that? I would like to say, Kayla, you did a really good job at the wording, the language you used on that one portion. I think now it reads more, there's more clarity to it going forward. Okay, there's motion on the floor. All those in favor? And that is carried. So we'll move on to unfinished business with the offsite levy policy with Director Fisher. That's number 7.
Good evening. This is some business that was tabled at a previous meeting of council. But I was asked to bring forward the offsite levy policy to review. So offsite levies, I'm just gonna rehash a little bit of information. I think Deputy Mayor Carr, you weren't in the room for this discussion last time. But the offsite levy policy is basically a bylaw used, there's an offsite levy bylaw. It's used to help fund infrastructure that may be required for development to proceed or as we grow as a community. But it isn't located on the site itself. So offsite levies can be collected for water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure, roads, any of like the community facilities like the police department, fire department. Currently our offsite levy model is built around water, sewer and roads. We've excluded stormwater and I don't believe we have any of the other items included in our offsite levy bylaw. A good offsite levy policy provides, offsite levy bylaw provides clarity for developers as they apply. There's some general stuff in the MGA that allows us to collect money or require a developer to put in infrastructure if it's required for development to proceed. If it's outlined in the offsite levy bylaw, well, we can't really do that in the same way. So we can't double dip. So it provides clarity. It says, these are the things that would be required as our community grows. If you want to proceed with this development, we're going to collect this money. You're not going to be on the hook for the whole thing necessarily. What can happen with an offsite levy bylaw is sometimes developers can get large bills when they were trying to do a smaller development and get caught up with kind of a having to pay for something that doesn't make sense financially for what they want to do, like putting up a shed and getting hit with a big offsite levy. So we have a policy that accompanies the bylaw and it outlines a number of scenarios. So there's table 2 includes, I think it's 13 conditions where if they're met, we won't collect an offsite levy for a development to proceed. And then, there's a section which allows us to do deferral, or like defer the offsite levy until the time of occupancy for, certain values of offsite levy that would be collected, so between, $10,000 and $250,000 of offsite levy. We could allow a deferral of up to 2 years, for anything more than $250,000. We'd allow a deferral of up to 5 years. Then there's also a section that covers installment payments. So if a developer would like to pay the offsite levy over time, we've got some guidance in this policy to allow for that. So as far as the down payment and then, kind of installment payments as the project would continue. So basically providing, in both those cases, the developer will be required to enter into an agreement to provide some securities to us. Usually the form of a letter of credit, and it's the one that makes the most sense. And then, that's kind of the big stuff there. One of the feedbacks we've heard is, that less than 10,000 threshold, kind of, it doesn't allow for deferrals for some of the smaller developments to happen, or somebody want to build a newer single family house on a parcel. Some of the older parcels in town, they're not gonna hit that unless it's a very large property. So that's sort of one of the feedbacks we heard was maybe lowering that threshold from 10,000 down to say 2,500, maybe makes some more sense. Just makes that more available for more developers. Other than that, I'm kind of opening up to you guys. If you guys have any other things that you wanted to discuss or look at potentially changing with the offsite levy policy. So,
Anybody have any questions for Pat? Counselor Deuce?
So I read the whole 65-page document, and for all the people who haven't read it, who might be viewing online, I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions. So, for example, I buy a lot that had a house on it at one point that burnt down and got cleaned up, and it's just a vacant lot now. And I want to build a new house on there. Are there offset levies on that? Yes or no?
so if the offsite levy has been collected previously for that property, meaning like we have water, sewer, and road, right? So if all three of them have been collected, then the answer would be no, offsite levies is not applicable. It's only if they haven't been collected. If two of them had been collected, say water and sewer, but not the road, that we could collect the road portion, and it's accounted for separately in the offsite levy bylaw. For rebuilding a property that was burnt down and cleaned up, there is in table 2, an exemption for that kind of scenario. It does have a time limit. So if you are within that time limit, rebuilding on that property, then the answer is no, it would waive it. If you are outside of that time limit, then it would typically apply.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Director Bishop? Counselor Babalola?
Just to follow up to what you just said now. I don't think there should be a time limit to whether offsite is collected or not, because I think maybe the MG or something says you can only collect an offsite once. However, if you are replacing the structure with a more demanding service, then I understand if you want to collect. If somebody contributed to this 100 streets, why would you need to contribute to it again? So putting a line meaning on that and being a reason for collecting outside the second time kind of defeat the purpose of offsite levies. In my own opinion.
Just to be clear, it's not collecting it a second time. You can't collect it a second time. The deferral is just for if you want to rebuild it. And then there was this second or third item in table 2 that you're talking about, where if you had to replace a structure that was damaged, there is a time limit. You want to remove that time limit. But if we're collecting offsite levies, if we've already previously collected it, we wouldn't be collecting it again because we can't. If they hadn't paid it in the first place, if you were quick enough, it should be covered as part of your insurable losses, right? To reinstate it, but If you don't, I do think that you want to have a time limit in there to encourage, somebody to rebuild faster. However, if council wanted to delete that, it just becomes a bookkeeping exercise. You could delete the term.
Counselor Carr, or Deputy Mayor Carr, sorry.
I think, the counselor was asking if you upsize, like say you bought a lot downtown that had a house and you decided to build a hotel on that lot, you're gonna have quite a increase in the demand and the usage on the utilities. I think that was maybe more what you were saying, was it not?
No, but if you're building a bigger structure, there may be more services can be, levies can be collected because now you're changing your services. For example, your water demand will be more and maybe your sewer demand also.
Yeah.
Will be more. In that case, I understand that, but if you're replacing a one down structure with exactly the same, and that the service demand is exactly the same, I don't see why we have to collect another one, even if you don't build it within 3 years. There may be other ways where we can kind of make you build it faster, but imposing that fee, it's not ideal in my opinion.
So with the scenario I brought forward, then would you have to assess them a second time and collect more at that point, or is it off the table because you've collected once already?
Depends, so if you've already paid your offsite levy, I can't collect it again, even if it was under an older model or older assumptions. If you have not, so if you had a building burned down like a house and you want to rebuild it with like a hotel. If the offsite levy had been paid prior, then we wouldn't be able to collect it again. If the offsite levy hasn't been collected previously, in that scenario, I would basically, I don't think the exemptions would apply and you would be charged the offsite levy for that kind of use. And if that makes sense? It will work, yeah.
Go ahead.
As I discussed with you the other day, I don't think I've heard very much opposition to any of the policy at all, except when it is to be paid, when it is to be collected. In here, it refers to it's due at the point of your permit application. And I would like to see it pushed to the back end. As I discussed with you, there is little or an insignificant amount of added load on the infrastructure until the building is occupied. And how you would do that, how you would track that, I don't know, but I know it would make it a lot easier for the developers and probably encourage more development as a result.
So Deputy Mayor Carr, I'd like to ask like sort of two pieces, because we've got the deferral section on that right now. So with that, are you comfortable with reducing or creating another section of deferral? So to lower the threshold from 10,000 to so like offsite levy, because we've got two kind of thresholds. Would you like to lower that? Are you comfortable with that? So that more deferral is available or more developments would apply for deferral?
I think the deferral in here, the deferral refers to a 3% rate of interest being charged when it's deferred as well, does it not? And I wasn't looking at deferral. I was looking at deferral of the payment, but that it would all be due at the occupancy permit stage, or if it's a land developer when they sell that particular lot. You know, not waiting for the development as such, just because you want the original guy that signs the agreement. And all of that would have to be included in the development permit stage and agreed upon at that stage. But I don't see much point in, and maybe I'm missing something. I don't see much point in in the payment plan and so on, if everybody is given the opportunity to pay it at occupancy.
So there's two pieces. There's the deferral piece, which is, doing, as you're saying, deferring it to occupancy. And then there's a second piece that's installment payments, right? Which is we want to pay it over a period of time. So there's two pieces there in the policy. So the deferral piece, deferring it till occupancy, or in the policy threshold one is between, if your offsite levy that we're going to charge you is between $10,000 and $250,000. You can defer that for 2 years or until occupancy, whichever comes first. That's threshold one. And then threshold two is if you are being levied or charged more than $250,000 worth of offsite levies, and that's combined between the three fields that we're collecting, then you could defer it up to 5 years or until occupancy. So we have that currently. I don't know if it's really been used to date. And one of the feedback I heard was, well, 10,000 is kind of a bigger development in some of the older areas of town, so. Make it more available, lower that threshold, and then we'd be talking, are you comfortable with the 2 years for the first threshold, or do you want? I lost my thought, I'm sorry.
I'll let you get. Anybody else have any questions? Counselor Erickson?
I agree with Deputy Carr. I don't understand what he's talking with, Director Fisher is referring to, if you're gonna have a delay with the payment, but it's also gonna be due on the date of occupancy. It seems to me that the date of occupancy should be the governing factor. And then there's a question then as to whether you're gonna allow them any extra time to complete the payment.
Anyone else have anything to add? Oh, Counselor Ford.
I'm just thinking out loud here, but with what you just discussed, Mr. Fisher, that would be up to the developer to choose which way they want to go, or is that, how does that work?
Between an installment payment and deferral?
Yeah,
You mean?
but whether they pay at time of occupancy, or if they decide, yeah, I want to pay now,
Yeah.
or
so
how does that work?
the developer in either case could choose to, I'm pretty sure it's in the policy, that they could elect to pay the offsite levy when it's calculated and sort of assigned. And then there's some guiding principles, but if we've got experience working with them, or our neighboring municipalities have good experiences working with the contractor, and we don't believe that there's a financial issue, we can do the deferral option. And if they're looking for payment terms to spread out the payments, then we would do that. I think normally I would say it's kind of up to them how they want to go. If they're more comfortable going on to a payment plan as opposed to a deferral, then we'll go with that.
So if the developer wanted to do the payment at time of occupancy, that would be up to the developer if they meet the guidelines.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that we've done the deferral. I know we've done the installment payment in the past.
Deputy Mayor Carr?
And with that deferral, you'd have to have a letter of credit or something from your finance, just to guarantee, just to protect the town at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, and then secondly, the timeline, the 3-year, was it 2-year and 5-year? Now, the reason we would put that in there is for what? Is just for tracking purposes? Is that why we would have that?
I think it was just mostly so that we could say this is how long we're willing to defer it at a maximum, right? So in cases where I'm aware of in my past community, there were several developments that got constructed but never were able to get sold or change hands. So if they ended up sitting on them for a really long time, we say, okay, no, like you've had enough time, we should collect this.
Councillor Ford?
So if if deferral, whatever it is, 3 years. And time of occupancy is 5 years. Then the offsite levies collected at the deferral because it came first. How does that work?
Yeah, so, okay, so there's two thresholds, right? 2 years threshold one, we're just gonna use that for. So under that, you would have either until 2 years or occupancy, whichever came first. So if you had 2 years pass and you still haven't achieved occupancy of whatever the development is, then you would be required to pay the offsite levies at that 2 year mark. And if you hit occupancy beforehand, then we would send the invoice then. That makes sense.
Anyone else? So I have one question. So I'm looking at the offset levy bylaw areas. And so I'm a developer, I come into town and I look at, I'm just gonna choose block 11 and block 46. What would be, like, could you just lead me through a rough comparison, what I'd be looking at in offset levies in comparison to, what blocks a developer ends up choosing?
I actually couldn't do that off the top of my head. But normally, like if a developer is looking at multiple properties, that's something that we can look at in our system fairly quickly for them. Like if they said, hey, have offset levies been paid on this property, or we're looking at a development, or these properties, like what's the amount and have they been paid? We can look that information up for them pretty quick.
So somewhere like Westbrook Estates or Westbrook, would those offsite levies be already paid since they don't really have infrastructure in the ground there? How would that work?
I think that they get assigned a different proportion of the offsite levy. So there's a number of different catchments, right? We actually have a lot of different catchments. When we built the offsite levy model, there's a lot of different areas. And so each one of those areas gets a slightly different rate, based on how much it's anticipated they're gonna need those upgrades in the future. So.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Just one more question, just as an example, so I'm actually understanding this. So I'm a developer. I come in, I want to build an apartment building. It's a 5-year build. Offsite levies have never been collected on that property. So with the offsite levy policy or bylaw, or whatever we're talking about, I'm 3 years into the build. So now that is due, or how does that work?
So that one, I'm gonna assume just based on the size, it's a 5-year, like a hit threshold 2, I'm just throwing, right? So if it hit threshold 2, the 5-year option, then you would have up to 5 years to defer the offsite levy. If it's only threshold 1, it's 2 years right now. You could change that to 5 years if you wanted. So that's anywhere between offsite levies being collected for $10,000 to $250,000. So for just a frame of reference, $250,000 of offsite levies is a big property, right? Like that's in line with, I'm not sure the exact number, but it's sort of in line with what offsite levies would be charged for the West Hill development, the multi-commercial development. It's quite large, right? So when we're talking about threshold 1, threshold 2, it's quite a big range, right? Whereas your typical house garage or whatever, it's probably under the $10,000, right? Offsite levies, just shooting from the head. Right, yeah.
So
I think like even some of there's been some multi-unit developments in the last 10 years, and I think that they would be under the $10,000 total offsite levy assessment for reference.
So on that build time then. If it's a 5-year build, even though they're not finished building, they have up till they have that 5 years, then they can ask for the deferral.
No, you would ask for the deferral, when we assign it, and then we would enter into, do that as part of the developer's agreement. And you would have up to 5 years, and then you pay it off early, then up to 5 years. And then we would send you the invoice in the 5th year. Or if you got your occupancy before that, we'd send you the invoice when you got your occupancy certificate. Is that clear, Councilor Ford?
Little bit.
Okay.
It's just like if you know if that's the build time, and I'm thinking like a larger development. And your offsite levy could be, or that threshold could hit before occupancy.
The biggest place you would see that is in a subdivision, like your building permits are typically only issued for 1 year. And then you can apply for an extension. So 2 years is typically what you'd see for a building permit. So where you would see a longer time period is typically with a subdivision where you subdivide, we assign the offsite levy, and then it might not get built for until a period down the road.
Or you may get the development built, but you don't sell the lots within 5 years, because the land development quite often takes longer. An actual construction project, even a big apartment, should be finished within 5 years.
Just trying to understand it.
Yeah, we do, like, when we're talking like construction timelines for water projects, like big water plants, wastewater plants, typically we're talking like 18 to 24 months, so.
I'm good.
Anyone else?
So I just would like some clarity, should we be making changes to the threshold amounts? Particularly lowering the 10,000 to a smaller number.
Counselor Douce?
So I'm just asking a question here. How large or how big is the average lot in Peace River? Because all of our prices are in hectares. So what's the average lot run for offsite levies?
It's under 10.
It's under 10. Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Carr?
I think it would be pro-development to drop it.
Mhm.
I definitely think that would help. I don't think 10 is a ridiculous number, but certainly would be a positive move to drop it.
Counselor Douce?
I would agree with that. I would drop it to probably 2,500. Like you suggested, I would agree with Deputy Mayor Carr.
Any other input for that?
I think it's good to keep it as it is. That's not being anti-development, but 10,000 in that amount, 10,000 compared to the structure they want to, should not be something that I think will discourage them from making their development or construction, in my own opinion. But if you say like somebody is coming to make say you want to build a single family house, which will cost at the minimum, say 300K, and you cannot come forward with 10,000 outside levy. I mean, if we compare to what the municipalities around us, I don't think anybody will kind of make a deferment for anything less than 10,000. So I think 10,000 is a good number to start from.
Deputy Mayor Carr?
If you have an old house in town that has never had the offsite levies paid on it, and you decide you want to build a garage in the back, will that trigger the offsite levies?
I think that's currently sitting as one of the exemptions in there for an accessory structure.
Okay.
But I have seen it in other communities where we didn't have the policy, where it did, and it was deterrent in that case. Are you comfortable leaving it with a 2-year deferral instead of a or for the lower threshold, or would you like to see that changed as well?
We're talking 2-year deferral.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay, so will someone make a motion, including the, oh, there she goes, Ms. Parsons.
If I might suggest one, and Director Fisher, please correct me if this is incorrect for the policy, or I've referenced the wrong part. So move that council direct administration to return a revised off-site levy policy to a future meeting of council for further discussion, in particular reducing the off-site levy deferment threshold number 1 to start at $2,500. That correct?
That sounds like what I am understanding right now.
Is there any more discussion on this? Any more points? Councillor Erickson?
Deputy Mayor Carr suggesting that it also be a longer period of time rather than 2 years.
No, anything that's gonna fit under that threshold, 2 years should be plenty to build any house. It should be. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay. If there is no more discussion on that, will someone like to put a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion as read.
Councillor Ford will make the motion as read by Ms. Parsons.
Move that council direct administration to return a revised offsite levy policy to a future meeting of council for further discussion, and in particular, reducing the offsite levy deferment threshold number 1 to start at $2,500.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion on the floor? And that is carried. Next up, number 8, current business, the 2026 utility supported operating budget with CAO Miller and Ms. Guidon.
PowerPoint for the document version. Probably.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh. You can control it from there? Oh, you're the best. Okay, so I am here to present the first look at the proposed 2026 utility budget. And we are going to start off with, we're going to go through some of the assumptions and some of the underlying things with the budget. And then we're going to go through each of the portions of the utility budget. We're going to go through the water fund, the wastewater fund, the solid waste fund, and the storm sewer fund, all individually. And then we'll go through some consolidated information and then we'll have some conclusions. Okay, so a little background. Until 2023, all town funds were considered tax supported. So the utility was part of the regular tax supported. And what happened with that was any of the deficits in the utility fund were offset automatically by tax revenues. This masked revenue shortfalls and contributed to infrastructure deficits. So 2023, 2024, we split the utility fund out so that it is a separate budget. And that aligns with the water and wastewater models that we discussed back in November and December. And with the utility budget, the utility fund should be self-liquidating. And even though we're showing them all as a group, we've got the water fund as its own self-liquidating fund, the wastewater fund as its own self-liquidating fund. So each of the components should be self-sufficient. And with that, any surplus within each of the funds goes back into a reserve for that particular fund. And the reserve levels are based on the utility rate model. Okay, so what have we included in the budget? We've got amortization expense is included in the expenses. And that is the historical cost of capital of assets expensed over time. We have not included principal repayment of long-term debt. That is not an expense. It does use cash, but it is not considered an expense. Our revenue calculations are based on the utility rate bylaw, which was passed in December. The budgeted figures are what we know as extrapolations from previous years, trends, and where necessary, our best estimates. The year-to-date information shown is subject to further adjustments. We're not done year-end. We're still working our way through it, so things are still changing. The budget figures, depending on our discussion tonight, and any information that we receive between now and the next time we present this, they could change. We've done something different this year. We've split the expenses between fixed and discretionary. Fixed expenses are those items where we have little or no ability to adjust. An example of that would be interest on long-term debt. We've got our debentures. The amount of interest we're going to pay is set by those contracts. We have no ability to adjust it. The discretionary expenses are items where we do have some ability to modify. We can do some things to minimize those expenses, but we also have to maintain certain minimum standards. The example I like to use is I have a car. I do maintenance on my car. I do oil changes. I can price them out and try to get the best rate. I could learn to do them myself, but that is a trade-off with time, equipment, capacity, or I could just not do them at all. If I choose to not do them at all, I might pay for it with more expensive repairs later on. So even though it's a discretionary expense, I have to do a certain minimum amount of work, otherwise it costs me more in the future. And we've got miscellaneous expenses, which we've budgeted for in 2025 and 2026, which include transfers to tax supported to reflect the administrative costs that tax supported does on behalf of the utility funds. Okay, so starting with the water fund. We've got our 5% increase in the sales of metered water. We've removed the revenue for the bulk water station. And the second to last line shows transfer from reserve of $14,270. That is the amount that we require to transfer from reserve to be able to balance the water fund. There was a transfer in the 2025 budget, but it was shown on the next slide. You'll see it as a decrease to expenses. So this year we've moved it to show it as a contribution rather than a decrease to the expenses. Okay, so now we are looking at the water administration. Fixed expenses have decreased by $139,000. The majority of that is the decrease in amortization on buildings. We had 2 buildings that maxed out their amortization in 2025. They're now fully amortized. So as a result, the amortization expense that we project going forward is reduced. Under discretionary expenses, some items are up a little bit, some items are down, but the biggest change is that contribution to capital reserve that was a negative expense in the 2025 budget. That's this year we're showing a $14,000 contribution on the income side. But last year we showed it as a negative expense. So we've just reallocated that to a better spot. Okay, moving forward to the water treatment plant. Under the fixed expenses, overall change of just shy of $15,000. And discretionary, a slight increase of $25,000. Again, consulting fees down a little bit, repairs and maintenance up a little bit, as priorities and projects have changed. Moving on to water transmission and distribution, the fixed costs, have remained fairly steady. I will bring your attention to the interest on long-term debt, which has decreased by $13,000. As we've been working hard to repay our debentures and we're rewarded with paying a little less interest. The discretionary expenses have decreased a bit as well. We've broken out our vehicle costs between fuel and other expenses and tried to get a better line on those. And the last part of the water fund are the water reservoirs. A slight decrease to the fixed expenses and a increase to some of the discretionary expenses, the contracted services and repairs and maintenance. Again, those are projects that look like maintenance, some preventative maintenance items in there. And overall, the water fund, at the bottom line there shows a zero where revenues and expenses match off and are equal. Any questions?
I just want to clarify something under 413 water reservoirs. So the utilities, the power portion in 2025 was $166,240. So that would be the power that ran that that it took to run that reservoir and make it operate for a year. Is almost like 150 grand for that.
Yes, it is my understanding there's a lot of pumps in them.
Yeah, so so in terms of like operating costs for our water facilities, it's usually amortization, like the cost of the asset, staffing, and then it's a coin toss depending on what the facility is, but it's usually utilities is our number 3 cost. $150,000, that's across all of the water reservoirs and pump houses. I think it's not uncommon to see that just for like one water treatment plant in a community our size, to see a water or power bill very close to that amount as well, right? So I think have several different cost areas, and we do spend a lot on power. So last year, in 2024, administration brought forward a recommendation to buy out one of the power contracts, and I think it was earlier this year or late last year, I brought forward an update on that buyout, and it was saving us about $1,200 a month. In terms of power, that was one water reservoir.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Carr.
In the first slide here, you have transfer from operating reserve. Now, is that the operating reserve for the whole town, or is this the reserve we are building with our utilities model that came out?
That would be a transfer from a utility reserve.
Oh, okay.
You're talking the 14,270.
Yep.
Are there any other questions at this point? Councillor Deuce.
So my question also relates to the utilities section of this. We went from, I'm just looking at 411 water treatment plant, we went from 270 to 314, a $43,000 difference. And I know we hired an energy person to look at some of this stuff. Has he reviewed this to see if ways we can lower this, or why are we seeing such a huge increase?
Haven't had a look at the water plant yet. He's looking at other things for me. But I think that's just power rate on the 411.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, you can continue.
Okay, so moving on to the wastewater fund. Increase in revenues of about $150,000. And the administration, so we've got an increase in our fixed costs of about 104,000. An increase in some of the amortization. Back in 2025, we adjusted our amortization policy and shortened the time frame for amortizing equipment from 10 years to 8. So that has resulted in a faster amortization of equipment. For our discretionary expenses, the contribution to capital reserve of $626,000. So that is the projected transfer to the capital reserve for the wastewater fund, assuming everything goes according to plan. Next slide. The wastewater treatment plant. Again, an increase in our fixed expenses of $35,000, some up, some down. The discretionary expenses, the first line is contracted services with an increase of $200,000. We're not actually adding an expense, we're moving it. That $200,000 is for sludge disposal and some other items, and it was previously included with the wastewater collection portion of the budget, so we're moving it to the wastewater treatment plant where it belongs. So you will see a corresponding decrease in another portion of the wastewater fund. Actually, I believe it's on the next slide here. So the contracted services you see is decreased by 210. That's the amount that we've moved from the wastewater collection up to the wastewater treatment plant. So each of them looks out of whack on their own, but when you look at them together, there's not a huge change between the two. Materials and supplies have decreased a little bit. We brought it down a little bit to what we anticipated using. The lift stations, not much change, a little bit of preventative maintenance. Again, on the repairs and maintenance has pushed that up. And again, the bottom line is revenues equaling expenses, and that includes the $626,000 transfer to capital reserve for the wastewater. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions on that? Or, Councillor Deuce?
The only question I have is I noticed the year-to-date janitorial is at 10,044 for the wastewater fund, and then you've got nothing projected for years going forward. Is there a reason for that?
That could be that the janitorial was included in other supplies in previous budget. We might have to look at doing a reallocation.
Okay, thank you.
I saw that too and was wondering why that little 10,000 was sitting there all by itself. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, next is the storm sewer fund, which happily fits all on one page. Revenues, minor change. Fixed expenses, there's not much in terms of fixed expenses. Storm sewers don't generally require a lot of power. Discretionary expenses, the contracted services went down a little bit. The contribution to capital reserve went up a little bit. And overall, again, it balances to zero. Any questions on this part, the utility? No. Okay, I'll keep going then. Solid waste, revenues have decreased. That's due to the $2.50 reduction on the utility rate bylaw for residential garbage. Contracted services, the budget was decreased after our contract for garbage collection that was negotiated this fall. The discretionary expenses, a little bit for legal, a little bit for miscellaneous, and a contribution to operating reserve of 88,000. And again, the solid waste balances. Any question?
Any questions? I have one. What is the program cost? What kind of programs would that be?
That is the summer, yard waste bins.
Oh.
And I believe it also includes the spring and fall cleanups. So those little extra things that you have.
Just to clarify, it's just the yard waste bins,
Okay.
the spring and fall cleanups are, in our contracted service.
Thank you, Pam. So.
And again, I just wanted to mention the contracted services was reduced twofold, one being a renegotiation of the contract. And also the recycling was taken over, and we're no longer responsible for those costs.
Yeah.
PR.
So I clicked one slide to make you back now, Taylor. There we go. Okay, so when we put all the funds together, total revenues of 8,938,000 and total expenses of the same. With overall an increase of 3.34%. And again, this is based on the funds all being self-liquidating and having the separate pools for the water, the wastewater, the storm sewer, and the waste management. And of all of these, only the water is currently not contributing to reserve. So we've made progress.
That 3.34 is an increase, you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Counselor Erickson?
Under your previous slide there with discretionary expenses, legal fees, you have a budget change of 10,000. But you said for the 2025 year, it was 5,000. Is that a typo? Should it be read 25,000?
No, the 2025 budget was 5,000, the 2026 budget is 15,000, so we've increased the budget by $10,000 for 2026.
What would be the logic behind that?
Yeah, it's open and public. Okay. We're under litigation with residents.
Okay.
Hey.
So, are you finished the whole, you got one more portion?
We've got some pictures for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this first chart basically shows the breakdown between the fixed expenses, the discretionary expenses, and then what we consider as some of the required discretionary expenses. So some of those items like training, the admin fee transfers that we really, might have some movement on, but we really need to have, so we identified those separately. And this is for all the funds combined, so this is an overall for all the utilities together. So, in terms of dollars, the fixed expenses are a shade over $6 million at 68%. The required discretionary expenses are 17% at 1.55 million. And then the other discretionary where we have a little more movement, a little more option at a shade under 1.3 million. Okay, so the next slide is a summary of those fixed expenses, the summary of the 68%. Of that, amortization is the majority of it at 38%, it's over a third. Salaries and benefits are at 24%, so about a quarter. The utilities are the next biggest chunk at 12%. Interest on long-term debt is at 4%. And then the chemicals, meters, testing, they're at around 8% at around $452,000. Those are the costs to get us our water that we're able to drink. And then we have some other fixed costs in there, but they are a lot smaller than the other ones that we have mentioned. And moving forward to the,
Oh, a quick question on that.
yes,
So your contracted services, what kind of services would you contract in this case, just for an example? Director Fisher's.
That 294 is our waste management contract for, the disposal, like waste disposal contract. It's locked in for the next 5 years.
Thank you.
okay, so the next slide shows the discretionary expenses. The majority of them at 56%, are the items that we consider the more required discretionary. So we've got the contributions to capital, because we know we have some significant projects coming up, particularly with wastewater. The admin fees, as well as some smaller expenses for training and development, postage. We need vehicle fuel to be able to maintain our facilities. The other discretionary expenses where we have a little more leeway, we've got other contracted services, not the waste management contract services with the contract, but other services as required, repairs and maintenance, materials and supplies, consultant legal fees. Those are some of the other items that are in the 44% on the smaller side of the bubble there. And then moving forward with this budget, the estimated impact on our reserves with the water, we'll have 1.4 million in amortization. We're going to have 490,000 in long-term debt repayments, less the $14,000 contribution to from the reserves. Overall, we should be able to have some increase to our overall reserves of $913,000. With the wastewater amortization expense, we'll plow that back into reserves. We'll have a $600,000 contribution to capital. We've got $616,000 in principal payments coming out of that. Again, $900,000 contribution to reserve overall. Storm sewer, we're looking at $192,000 contribution, and solid waste an $89,000 contribution to the reserves. We did not anticipate any capital grant funding that would be part of this. And going forward, we will be providing opening and projected closing reserve balances.
Does anybody have any questions? I have another one. So, Director Fisher was saying that, utilities was the third, usually the third highest, expense, and I noticed in the summary fixed expenses that that is true. So does that reflect across all other departments when you're doing your budget? Do you find that to be the utility to be in that hierarchy of expenses, or how do you see that throughout the rest of the budgeting?
Utilities are significant for all the facilities. On a department by department basis, for instance, the finance department, we're one small department in town hall. We don't specifically have utilities attached to our department, but certainly for facilities like the pool, the Baytex, town hall as a whole, utilities are significant.
And then with the, it might be kind of a silly question, but with the, reserve, like, do you have, a number of where you would like to see that reserve be? Like, if tomorrow we wanna put up, one of those, temperature gauges to show the population, how far we are on this, reserve budget, you know, here we are, and we need this much, and here we are, and each year show them. Like, is that possible? Do we have like kind of a threshold that we'd like to see, or is it?
For the water wastewater one, I think because I think the modeling documents are publicly facing. Certainly the reserve balance in there will fluctuate over time as we're doing some of these bigger projects and stuff. So like, and depending on what the transfer to reserve look like, if you go into the utility model presentation that was provided, you'll see even like there's a couple of years where maybe it goes negative and then comes back over time, depending on like which funding scenario you're looking at. So I don't know if it's a target necessarily, because it is gonna change, like especially in the next 5 years as we're doing some bigger utility projects. Gonna go up and down.
Okay, so it's not something that we can gauge. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? If not, could we get Councillor?
I was just gonna entertain a motion if nobody had any other questions. I would move that council direct administration to return the 2026 utility supported operating budget to the next council meeting for further discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Deuce. With that motion on the floor, does anyone have anything to add? Any questions, any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion on the floor? And that is carried. Thank you, Roxanne. Moving on, we'll move on to the reports, infrastructure and development 2025 fourth quarter report with Director Fisher.
Yes, it's attached. I don't know if there's any questions about there or if you want to walk through it, but certainly in Q4, a big focus of my department has been sort of snow removal, winter operations kinds of things. I will be bringing forward a report to council later on, just on the impacts of this snow in December that we had. It did have some pretty hefty budgetary impacts. I will be asking for more money for 2025, just because I spent more than I had anticipated. But I think you would have rather me spent that at the time to get the roads cleared than stop it. I'm gonna ask for more money when we all kind of think we're gonna do it anyways. The river did freeze in over December. This is early. There was also an ice jam up on the bridge a little bit. So the ice kind of piled up on the bridges. So there is a little bit more differential from the south end to the north end that we would see. So we'll be watching that really close as we come into the spring melt. Certainly, all through the process, we were in discussions with the province. They have a 4-person river ice forecasting team in Edmonton that is a great technical assistance for us, and they put boots on the ground and monitoring equipment on the ground to assist us. They're a tremendous resource, and we'd be looking to them for some guidance as we move to breakout season coming up. We did the water and wastewater side. I can't remember if I included it in the previous report, but we did finish sort of some clarifier upgrades at our wastewater plant in response to a failure that happened late 2024. So we did a temporary fix and came back for a more permanent fix last fall. That was completed in September. And that was funded in part by a previously opened project by administration from some failures that happened in 2021, I think, and provincial funding. I think that's the big stuff, unless you guys have questions for me.
Does anyone have questions? Councillor Deuce?
Just one question. I noticed your first quarter 2026 priorities included line painting. Is there any planning to do curb painting with that as well?
I just missed that last year in the tender, so And I think what will happen is we'll put it out for tender and then we'll work with the contractor, because some of it might not need to be repainted this year. So we'll try and optimize our money so we don't spend too much, but I definitely plan on including some curbs because that was missed last year.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have one. I have a feeling Councillor Douce and I had red check marks in the same place in our agendas today. Mine is to do with line painting as well. Do you have a rough timeline for that? Just a rough approximate one when it would begin?
I'm hoping to get the contractor lined up early this year, certainly before his schedule fills up, and try and get it in June, after we've done sort of the road sweeping and stuff.
Thank you. Any more questions? None? Okay, we'll move on to the January monthly development report with Director Fisher.
Yeah, I changed the format a little bit because it wasn't working for me, so I'm open to know if this is a little bit more informative for you. We had 2 development permits issued in January, 2 that were being reviewed for the previous meeting that we got an application. But it may not have had all the information, or it's sitting on my desk to say, yes, we're good to go. So those ones aren't issued, and then out of the 3 that aren't issued, 1 will be brought forward to a council, because it's in a direct control district. I think that'll be probably the next meeting if we put anything together. And 1 will be referred to the MPC once it's deemed complete, as it's for discretionary use. We've received 2 building permits to year to date. 1 has been issued, 1 is being reviewed. There's 2 building permits that were applied for in 2025 that have to submit some additional information that I'm aware of. And we did have a letter sent to one of the landowners for outstanding deficiencies, and reminding them that they do have to address that.
Any questions on that? Is the turnaround time on development permits still roughly 2 weeks? When we were talking before,
It's quicker than that typically. It all depends on how fast they're getting us the additional information, right? So once they get us all the information, depending on, it's got to go to MPC or council. It's usually a day or 2 once we have all the information. If we have to go to MPC, that timeline stretches out a little bit longer. And the council one will be probably about 3 weeks because of the timing when it came in and when we were able to look at it.
okay, thank you. So if there's no other questions, we'll move on to number 3. The report will be the Corporate Services Department 2025 4th quarter report with Ms. Guido.
Okay, well, Systems Administration, last quarter of 2025, the monitoring and the firewalls and security tools were all doing their thing and keeping us safe. There were a number of tickets that were addressed during the quarter. Looking ahead, there's a handful of Windows 10 devices that need to be upgraded to Windows 11. The vast majority of them were done in 2025. There's just a handful of them left. Starting to plan for the 2026 server replacement, including getting bolts. And planning to install microphones in council chambers. I'm not going to give any kind of timeline, but I do know equipment has been ordered. And I believe we have most of it. We're just waiting on straggling pieces. So it's in the works. Communications, it was a busy fall with the election, introduction of council. December had pretty much daily updates regarding where the snow clearing was going and responding to questions and queries. And within there was also notifying the public of the new waste management contractor and switching over bins. Looking ahead, there's going to be some communication regarding the new utility rates. there's plans to establish a regular form of communication between the mayor and town residents. And preparing communication plans for River Break and wildfire season. And I believe we're also planning to provide residents with information regarding property taxes and where the funds go and what's impacted property tax rates. For finance, on the property tax side, we had a couple of assessment review board hearings in December. Most were settled through negotiation, but on the one hearing that did actually go to a hearing, it was resolved in our favor. We sent out tax reminder notices and collected a fair amount with that. We're starting to identify the needs for our new enterprise resource planning software. It's going to be a lengthy process to make any kind of transition, so we've started to do some preliminary research. Looking ahead, year-end, so year-end reconciliations and adjustments. That's why all the numbers are subject to change when it comes to prior year actuals. The assessment, property tax assessment, listing is due by February 28th. We have to prepare the arrears list for property taxes, to submit to land titles by the end of March. And we're also working on the operating budgets. First one seen was the utility budget tonight, and we're also working on the tax supported budget. For human resources, payroll, and the health and safety, the health and safety audit was completed. We did the external audit for Lac Saint Anne County. Both of the auditors, one came from employee services, one came from finance. Payroll is very busy with all of the year-end items, T4s, pension reporting, WCB. And they've started search for a new director of corporate services. Looking ahead, again, working on year end, they did a lot of their reconciliations before the end of the year. And now it's time to actually make sure everything balances and all the slips and reports are filed. They're already planning for the 2026 summer jobs. So they've got those listings posted. Yeah, that's the bulk of it. So any questions?
No questions? Ms. Gato, do you want to just move on to your next one with the variance report?
Sounds good. I've attached the variance report. Again, the figures are unaudited. I cannot stress that enough. This is what we have. When I pulled the figures to put the reports together, we still have significant adjustments to be made. We're going to be fine tuning the amortization. We're going to be adjusting inventory, bad debt expense, capital, making sure all the capital assets have been recorded properly. Right now, we've got a positive variance of $775,000. Again, this is as of the date we pulled the figures. We still are expecting some payables to come in and various adjustments that could change that figure a fair amount. But as for where it stands right now, the tax supported operations currently are in a negative budget variance of $932,000. Department revenues are about 1.2 million over budget, primarily due to the unbudgeted evacuation revenue, and there is offsetting expense that matches that. Protective services are approximately 309,000 under budget. And there again, we've got some year-end accruals, primarily with the RCMP contract, which will be reported during the year-end process. Public works are under budget. predominantly due to staffing position vacancies. Supplies and materials are currently under budget, but I know that we have some adjustments that need to be made there, so that will change. We do have an overage in contracted services, which Director Fisher mentioned. That pretty much, it was on target until December hit. Collectively, recreation and community services are around 500,000 under budget. And we still have the transfers to and from reserves, which will be recorded as part of the year-end process. That's pretty much one of the last things that we do. On the utility side, the water wastewater, we've got a positive budget variance right now of 1.7 million. With revenues exceeding budget by around $160,000. Expenses are roughly 82% budget. And again, transfers to reserves will be probably the last adjustment that we will make. We still have inventory adjustments to do for both the utility and the tax supported budgets. And again, I cannot stress enough, these figures are unaudited and we still have a number of adjustments to make as part of our year-end process. Any questions?
Are there any questions? If there are none, we will move on to number 5 with Director Kress. Oh.
I may be able to answer some of the questions, otherwise I would ask if you could just save them for the next meeting. I'll be sure who's here in attendance.
Okay, both those, number 6 is also with Director Kress, the 2026 Protective Services Monthly Call Report. So we can wait, anybody that has questions, we can, okay, Councillor Ford.
Yeah, just one question, maybe you can bring the information back next meeting. When it comes to fire department and medical responses, I see there's 86 calls. I'm curious as to, are those medical assist calls? Is it because we have a quote of how we respond to medical? So I'm just curious on that number, if it's medical assist or like lift and help or stuff like that.
I will get some information and come back with that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move those until Director Kress is present, and we'll move on to number 7. And that will be the Community Services Department 2025 fourth quarter report with Director Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of items of note. Probably the biggest topic is the hot tub. It is taken form. You can actually, by the photos, see seats and where the bubble pumps and lights will be. And these were, the last set of photos were January 23rd. So there's been further progress to date. We're moving into, they have to test the basin, do a water tightness test first, and then they'll move into tiling. So once the tiling starts, we're on the road right to the end. Slight adjustment in schedule. There's been a couple of minor delays, which is always expected through a construction process, but nothing insurmountable. And our contractor has been excellent to work with and work through each of those challenges and always brought forward solutions. So we are looking at a slight delay in opening around mid to later February is what we're projecting now, which is only off by about 3 weeks or so. So not bad at all. We have awarded the signage wayfinding and signage project. So we're moving forward, had a kickoff meeting just recently with that contractor. And we'll hopefully when spring comes and they can start drilling into the ground, start seeing some signs going out in spring and early summer. We have one other tender that closed, the river bank assessment. We had a good response to that also, but we won't be awarding until later in February because of the snow pack. We won't be able to kick off that actual assessment until the snow is gone. So we're not sort of chomping at the bit to get that one out as quickly as some of the others. Some other topics, if we remember Christmas, our adopt a grandparent program was exceptional this year. We had just fantastic response from the community. Lots of involvement and participation, which in turn allowed us to ensure we were able to assist more seniors. And for some seniors who are really struggling, we were able to provide a little bit more to them, which was extremely gratifying for everyone involved.
Can I ask how many in total that are for recipients of the bags?
I'll have to get back to you with that. I don't have the exact number on. I believe they had the number of bags, but I don't know that our senior services put in the number of seniors.
Just curious, it's okay.
Yeah, it's over 100, but I'm,
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. We also had an RFP out for a new provider for our Meals on Wheels program, so that was awarded too in December. And just lots of programming. Of course, a real significant drop in usage at all of the facilities in the month of December, as no one could get out of their driveways or maybe get to the facilities, so things picked up in January, but definitely saw a drop there. Yeah, any questions? Oh, and we have the navigation, oh, never mind, that's a looking ahead for the navigation center. It's always tough on these when the time frame is. If there's any questions.
Any questions? I have one. Elm tree pruning and removal. So what's that about?
So there's a provincial ban on trimming elms from April 1 until October 1st, every year. And it's during the sap season, the sap would be running in the elms, and the sap is what attracts the thank you. Yeah, I should know this off the top of my head. I talk about it all the time. So we adhere to that because it's a provincial act. And it's part of our standard maintenance process that we wait for any tree trimming on elms until that time frame. In the event that we have to address an elm tree, well, sometimes a branch will break in a storm, that kind of thing, we will address it quickly. And then we dispose of any branches or twigs or whatnot as per the regulation.
I just was interested in that because there have been a lot of questions around the table around why we need a tree person and all that. Well, I just read an article today that Alberta municipalities are put out an article on liability for trees that you own as a town.
Yeah.
There's a liability attached to them. So that is the logic behind having that program.
Absolutely, very much so. I mean, based on just what we've inventoried, 500 trees, and we're not done yet. We can't manage what we don't know what we have, if we don't know what we have. Did I say that? Sorry, it's tail end of a cold, so I'm not fully functioning. So if we don't have an inventory and know what we have in place to manage and maintain, then we are putting the town at risk. So that's a big reason why we're attempting to manage what we have. And we will be looking at the species of trees going forward. We won't be putting in place certain species because of the increase in disease in quite a number of different species. Black knot is rampant through the community, so no more cherry trees, no more maydays. We're not putting those species in place, that kind of thing. Yeah. You'll see lots of spruce. They're safe. That seems to be
And my only other question is, the community scholarship promotion, is that a new thing, or can you give me a little bit of history on that?
Sure, we've had a community scholarship program for, I don't know how long, quite a long time, over a decade. Typically, we inform our schools and community groups, so soccer, dance, those organizations are informed about the program. Cause then they can identify if they have a parent or family member asking for some assistance. That they're usually referred through those systems. So we've had it in place for quite a while. It dipped in terms of its use around COVID, of course, but it's starting to uptake again. And I think more recently with the Ron Campbell Memorial Scholarship Fund that was added, that was added to our program. I think that's increased promotions around it. So we'll be promoting it every spring and fall, typically around the registration timeframe in the community when that programs open up for students and youth for use. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions for Director Bell? I'm the only question box tonight. Okay, we'll move on. On number 8, we'll move on to the North Peace Housing Foundation Board meeting report with Deputy Mayor Carr, if he has anything to report on that.
Not too much to report. North Peace Housing continues to have issues with water breaks that are causing evacuations. They fixed the second one up at Garden Court, and the board decided to put in a second safety system, but when I read the report, I see that that's been delayed on Johnson Controls End. Beyond that, not really much to report. The other facility that had a water break, most of the families came and picked up their loved ones apparently, and they'll be finding other accommodations until that's repaired. Little bit of equipment purchased. Other than that, not very much.
Any questions for Deputy Mayor Carr? None. We'll move on to number 9, and that will be the Peace Regional RCMP Community Advisory Committee meeting minutes with Councillor Ford.
Just a couple of things. The Alberta Community Crime Prevention Conference website is now active for registrations. That conference is May 4th to 6th in Calgary. I know 2 of us from the town are already registered, myself and Director Chris. The Speed Reader board has been put away for the winter, and our group did purchase a new laptop to do the downloads as the other one kind of cratered, getting kind of old. Also, our local RCMP have been doing some proactive patrols and doing a lot of the mandatory alcohol screening. And I'm pleased to say that approximately over 40 vehicles were pulled over and only 1 impaired. So 1 impaired is good. Still 1 too many, but it is good news. Also the Northern Sunrise Crime Watch, or Rural Crime Watch, has a Crime Watch symposium coming out. I did email Catherine the registration form if anybody from council or administration is wanting to attend. And on a side note, we have 2 brand new members sitting on our board. So we do have 2 grade 9 students, one from Glen Mary and one from Peace River High School. That those are those 2 students that we were able to get from the cadets.
Yep.
So they're in grade 9. They're going to be on our board for the next 4 years. They're really hyped to be there. And last but not least, there was a stolen vehicle recovered at an oil site with a firearm in it. That person has been remanded into custody. And if we remember our conversation when it came to cameras and the technology last meeting, this has a bit to do with it, especially when that technology is already out in the oil field and they can do license plate reading. So there's one example. And yeah, that's it.
Any questions for Councillor Ford? That brings us to the end of the reports. Would anyone be prepared to make a motion on that? Counselor Erickson,
I move that council accept reports 9.1 to 9.9 for information.
all those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to number 10, information, the council communication package that you received, the January 23rd package. If anybody has anything to speak to on that. Seeing nothing, I will ask for a motion for that, please. Counselor Deuce,
I move that council accept item 10.1 for information.
all those in favor of that motion? And that is carried. So that brings us an end to the public portion of the meeting, and we will now go into closed session. And we will see you all next week. Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion to go into closed. Okay, Councilor Board moves us into closed. Thank you. And all in